Two hardest parts of my job are number one, putting a value on a child's life. And number two is telling people I can't help them. It's a horrible situation. When we get these cases, what it's really about is, working with these people and fighting for them.
I'm so excited to have here today Angie Miller. She is not only an attorney at Ryan and Miller in Missoula, Montana, but she is also a wife, a mother to the cutest little boy that I've ever seen online. And you are expecting another child, which is amazing. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Miss Angie has two dogs, and she has actually, oh, I think it's an amazing Instagram account that I love actually looking through. You're posting tips on how to succeed in law school, how to exhibit confidence. And I think those are so important. And you share a lot about yourself. So as I'm looking through and I see the things you're putting out, I actually do find it incredibly uplifting. And I love seeing such a positive and uplifting presence on social media. So I'm completely drawn to it. And so this is why I wanted to have you on the show. And I just want to get to know you better. And so thank you for being with us on the show today, Angie. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Amy. I really appreciate you having me, and I really appreciate you saying all of those things. So thank you very much.
Well, they're all true. They are all true. You're wonderful. So I would really love to get started to give you an opportunity to share about your firm and your practice and what it is that you do.
Yeah, so my firm is Ryan and Miller. My two partners. So one of my partners is Paul Ryan. He has been an attorney for almost 31 years this August, which is just
Wow.
absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And then another partner that we recently brought in, Abigail Coburn. She has been an attorney for 7 years. She was with another firm for a couple years, opened up her own practice, had that for 5 years. And then we convinced her to come over and join us. And so we're very excited to have her. So we're here in Missoula, but we cover kind of all of Montana. It's a really big state, but essentially a small bar. And so it's really helpful to be able to represent people all across the state. So we do have a place in Bozeman too, and we're able to help clients out of Bozeman and then travel quite a bit. We mainly do criminal defense, personal injury, and medical malpractice are kind of our big areas. So I primarily do our personal injury, medical malpractice side. I do a little bit of criminal defense. It keeps me in the courtroom, and I'm a really big advocate for that, especially for, younger lawyers. I think it's really good to stay in the courtroom in front of judges and
Mhm.
just kind of that sort of experience where you need to think on your feet and be challenged a little bit.
Of
Um,
course.
so that's, yeah, very fulfilling for me to have that. We have several individuals who work remote. We are definitely like a little family, I always tell people, and it's hard to like bring people in or let people leave this little family
Right.
we have created. So we have two paralegals that work remotely. One has been with my partner Paul his entire career, so all 31 years she's been his
Wow.
paralegal. Yeah, it's amazing to have that type of relationship, through work where they've watched their
Mhm.
families grow up together. So that's really special. And then one of the paralegals that is mainly on the personal injury side with me, I believe he's worked with her for 17 years. And so it's just amazing these bonds that we have with our office. And we really pride ourselves on kind of being a little unconventional in that way. Of having a family environment where it's a relaxed environment. We truly care about each other, and we feel like that makes us very compassionate towards our clients too, and makes our clients feel, at home and comfortable with everyone in the office.
Oh, yeah, I have no doubt. I think it speaks volumes when you have people who band together and stay together for such a long time. You always hear people talking about, we're a family, and a lot of people like to say it, but these are the things that actually show it. Because if you truly do feel that way, you stick around and you stay, even when things are tough. People make or break a business, or they can make or break a firm, or any team can be, it's you either make it or it's broken based on the people. So yeah, they've been there so long. That is a huge testament to, clearly you guys have a great culture there. And I gotta say I'm jealous. I haven't been a part of many of those, but I mean, I do the same thing with my firm. I'm trying to instill that and so far it's going very well, but it is hard to maintain. There's a lot of working together and you got to let the love show through. Because sometimes it's tough love. So you got to let that show through. So that's wonderful. What started you on this path of knowing you wanted to get into law? And then why did you choose, med mal personal injury?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So when I was about 15, I made the decision I wanted to go to law school essentially. And I still kind of kept some other doors open. So I grew up with divorced parents my entire life. I mainly lived with my mom, but, saw my dad quite a bit. Lived in a smallish town with my mom, but my dad actually has a ranch. And I grew up in Colorado. So that's over in northern Colorado. So I always say I got like the best of both worlds. I got like kind of that ranch life, that city life, and
Hmm.
it was a really good mix. But both of my parents are just very hardworking individuals. So it just was never a question for myself or my two sisters. Like we had to work really hard for what we wanted to do. And we were, really a family that was heavy into sports. I played volleyball. I mean, growing up, I played basketball, ran track, and played volleyball, but I mainly isolated on volleyball as I got older. And my mom is big on education. And, I was spending so much time with volleyball, and it was looking like I was at a level where I could go play out of college, and hopefully get my education paid for.
Yeah.
And my mom, I'll never forget, she sat me down and said, "You're not just going to go play volleyball for 4 years and do nothing with school." So she's like, "You need to start looking at schools and focus on education and figure out what degree you want and what you want to do in life." And I remember at the time, I'm like 14, 15 years old. I'm like, I don't know what I want to do for the rest of my life. Like,
Yeah.
that's a
That's
big
a lot.
commitment to make. But I'm very thankful that she did that because it really made me stop and think and analyze, like, what am I interested in? What do I want to do for the rest of my life? Knowing I didn't have to decide that day, but like I could start picking that path. Um, and so I always enjoyed school. I've always really liked science, medicine. That's always been very interesting to me. So I kind of started looking down that route and what I could do there. And I didn't know if I truly wanted to go be a doctor. I knew I wanted to be a mom. I've always wanted to be a mom. And so being a doctor and a mom didn't seem like, the easiest thing in the world. And I remember thinking about being a marine biologist, and I was like, I hate being hot. I don't want to live anywhere super warm by the ocean. Like, I don't think that's
Right.
for me.
Right.
Um, Thought about being a vet, and I was like, oh, I would take home like every animal with me. I'm way too loving towards animals.
It would be a hard situation.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So then I, kind of started doing some research, and I was like, oh, what about being a lawyer? And a girl that I played volleyball with, her dad was actually a judge. And I went and shadowed him, and I was like, wow, I love this. And I talked to him about it, and he was like, you can get your undergrad in anything and then go to law school. So if you're interested in science and medicine, go get a biology degree and then go to law school and you'll be fine. And so that's kind of where the whole idea started rolling from. I then worked at a law firm. I interned at a law firm in high school so I could kind of see like what's the day-to-day like? Is this something I really want to do?
Right.
And really enjoyed it. And so I decided to, I ended up going to Montana for school. I got a volleyball scholarship at Montana Tech in Butte, Montana, Butte, America, as we like to call it very proudly. And so I went there and it was a really good school. I got a biology degree. So with doing biology, I kept the door open. If I wanted to do something else, if I wanted to go to medical school, I could. And that was important to me. And important that I got to get a degree and study something for 4 years that I was very interested and passionate about. So then came the time, I was probably like a junior in college where I was like, okay, I for sure want to go to law school. Like that's what I want to do and started, going down that route. And then I didn't know how I was going to use my biology degree. I didn't know that I was going to do medical malpractice. I actually thought about like water law
Right.
environmental law,
Right.
which is, definitely like a hot topic, especially here in Montana. We have like a great environmental law program.
Oh.
I wasn't, sure what I wanted to do. And then before I started law school, that's actually when I met my legal partner, Paul, and I came and interned at his office. And I'll never forget when I came in and met him, he was like, I don't really have a position for you, but I think you'd be a really good fit. So why don't you come in and do like 10 hours a week or whatever? Or maybe it was 20 hours that first summer. And so I, came in and started working, and I just absolutely fell in love with the work that we did, both
Mhm.
criminal, personal injury, medical malpractice. And it really just resonated with me. And I was like, this is what I want to do. I was able to, use my background in biology, I felt, and, when going through medical records, which you can definitely relate to, of how that's kind of a
Not the
different
funnest
language.
thing.
No,
True.
it's not. And it's like a
Yeah,
different language.
it
And
is. Yeah.
yeah, having, a technical background where you at least know how to research things or, look things up. I think that's, really important, has really helped me. And so I, was pretty sure that's what I wanted to do. When I was in law school, you have to do a clinic, so like get real world experience,
Mhm.
which is, I think, a great program that our university here has. And so I wanted to go try to work with the prosecutors in Missoula County. That was, something that it was kind of one of the prize clinics that a lot of people wanted because you got trial
Mhm.
experience. So it
Yeah.
was highly sought. And I ended up getting that, and I was so excited. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I had great mentors, other attorneys that I still am in touch with or work with today. I really appreciated seeing that side of it because I'd never seen, that side of the criminal justice system. It was only the defense side.
Mm.
And while I loved the experience, I walked away knowing I never wanted to do that because I need a client, you
Yeah.
know, and having someone to work with and,
Mhm.
represent, that was so important to me. And I didn't realize that, going to law school. Like I didn't a lot of people are like, oh, I want to help people. And in theory, yes, we all want to help people, but I didn't really know what my driving factor was until I got, through that experience. And I was like, I want to help people. I want that day-to-day interaction with clients. I want to be their advocate. I want to help them. And not that, prosecutors in the state isn't helping people, they are. It's just in a different way. And I just really meshed with having that one-on-one with a client.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. I totally get it. I will say that is one thing I miss no longer working in the hospital and transitioning to this is I don't have that day to day where you're interacting with people. I mean, they're not your clients, they're your patients, but there's something about that day to day interaction. It makes it hits you harder and it matters just a little bit more. Not that you didn't care before, but when you see their face, when you hear their voice, when you're in constant communication, it's almost like that accountability factor really heightens and it just hits you different and it makes things matter more and you get a little more invested. And I know that can be difficult getting a little invested in things, but at the same time, it makes you want it more. And I just feel like you fight harder and you start putting your passion just much more in there. So I totally get it. And I think it takes a special person to be able to succeed and fulfill that need without needing that day-to-day interaction. I
yeah,
think it's a little bit harder to get there. You can, but I think it's just a little bit more challenging. So yeah, I totally, totally get that. And I think that's awesome that you were able to have a friend and shadow and not every my parents when I was young, they were just like, you're just going to college. You're just going. I didn't know what to do. You're going, you're going. So I had no idea what I was doing other than I'm going. So it actually took me a little bit longer to find my path, but I found it and I absolutely love what I do as well. But so do you feel like your biology degree, it actually because you mentioned, because yeah, the medical records can be a hot mess.
mhm.
Absolutely. And it's the biggest thing and the biggest struggle we're finding with most attorneys is it's like it's a whole other language, just like what you said. But do you feel like your biology degree really has made a big difference to where you feel like it makes it much more manageable for you, maybe as opposed to someone who doesn't have that?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely think so. It's one of those things where, with that background, I mean, it not only makes it easier, but it is where my passion is. So,
Mhm.
getting to do like, especially medical malpractice cases. I always tell people, I'm like, if you're, you know, getting in the depths of a medical malpractice case, and for us, that's if we're taking it in front of our legal panel, which is a step that we have to take in Montana, you should know that area like an expert. Obviously, I'm
Mhm.
not going to be a qualified doctor to go perform any
Right.
surgery, but the terminology, what the risk factors are, what it looks like for surgery. It is really important to me when I take those cases because they're so, that's so highly technical when you start
Mhm.
talking about what's the standard of care for a doctor, a physician, a nurse, to be looking at. And so I really take it upon myself that I want to step into their shoes. What am I supposed to know? What is this terminology? How am I supposed to use it? Um, and I actually I love YouTube. We can watch surgeries on YouTube. How
Isn't it crazy? I know, it's crazy.
So that's something that I do. I mean, I just had a case almost a year ago go in front of the panel in Montana, and I was, just watching videos. I'm like, what does all of this mean? What does this look like? And when I was doing the, cross-examination of the doctor, I felt like, we were on the same level as far as understanding how does this procedure work? What are you supposed to be looking for? And that's where I think, my degree can kind of give me that upper hand because not only am I interested in it just by nature, but, I've spent time in this to understand like these are the
Mhm.
types of things that you need to know and to research. And like that's a big thing is learning how to research because you go to
Yeah.
law school and you learn how to research, but it's legal research,
Right.
So like being able to go back on, okay, well, I read this article, but, where is this published? Has this, you know,
Mhm.
experiment been repeated and stuff like that.
Right.
Like this isn't
Yeah.
just a one-off opportunity that someone wrote an article on.
Yeah.
Uh, so that becomes very important to me, and I think it's been extremely helpful
Mhm.
in my cases to really elevate them to another level of I fully understand this, and when you get in front of a jury. Yeah, like I had the opportunity to teach while I was in law school, and I absolutely
Mhm.
loved it. And the reason why is because if you're teaching something, you have to know it so well.
Mhm.
I'm sure you know
Right.
exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
You get to know it to a whole nother level. And so when you're taking a case and you're putting that in front of a jury, you have to know it very well. You have to be very fluent in understanding the whole process, but also, and this is something that I'm sure you run into with your line of work is you have to be able to explain it to someone who isn't maybe
Mhm.
medically savvy, who doesn't know these terms.
Yep.
So that's where it is really important to understand it and say, okay, how do I take this concept that's very complex and how do I
Mhm.
break it down so that everyone can fully understand it?
Yeah, and that's awesome because I will tell you that that end point, that is the biggest challenge I think most people who are in the medical field when they are assisting and consulting on cases, I think they have a big struggle with that too, because what they're used to doing is having these conversations with other medical people. And
Yep.
so everybody just knows. So what is really that medical jargon becomes normal talk between two medical folks to where you don't even realize you're speaking medical jargon sometimes, right? Unless it's something really rare or unique. Um, and it's true. Like when you're teaching something, it really solidifies your knowledge, which is awesome. And I've actually taken a lot of opportunities to try to mentor and teach too, but it's for the same reason. It helps keep you kind of on your toes and you kind of know your stuff and you're learning new things and researching. But the biggest struggle I find with medical folks who are working in this arena is and it's not even dumbing it down. That's not the right term, but it's just talk like a normal person. Talk in
It's
regular words. And we really have to overdo it, and I have to tell people, pretend you're speaking to, like, a 10-year-old.
Mhm.
How would you talk to this 10-year-old? And it's not that it's really dumbing it down, but it's gonna force you to use normal words because now you have to think different, and, that is a huge struggle that most people I think that are medical have, so that's probably actually a huge advantage on your part because the medical is not your 100% focus and it's legal, but you have that medical component. It's probably easier for you to translate it because you're not speaking in medical jargon every day all the time with everybody that you're in contact with. So it actually is probably a big advantage for you. You're probably better at translating that, or you might be than most other professionals. So that's good. That's pretty amazing, actually. Do you ever find though that you have any big struggles still, despite your degree in biology? Are there still things with the medical that you struggle with, or over time have you kind of worked all those kinks out and it's a little more streamlined for you now?
I do find struggles in the sense that I'll be like, oh, this has to be malpractice. And then I
Yeah.
talk to an expert and I'm like, what?
Mm.
This is not below the standard of care. So sometimes still finding that line, it just blows
Yeah.
my mind. It just becomes such a technical thing. And one of the other things that, you mentioned of professionals talking to each other and using that legal jargon is, once we retain an expert, like getting to that part, that's a big step for me of, finding an
Mhm.
expert. And a big reason is I want to make sure that if we go the whole way, if we have a trial, that they are going to appear very well to the jury and that they can explain themselves to a jury. And sometimes that's really hard, especially you get into
Mhm.
very technical fields. And I talk to a couple doctors and I am like, you are so smart, but you cannot like step
Yeah.
out of that medical
Right.
jargon, right?
Right.
Um, so that's kind of a side note of what we talked about is sometimes I'm on my experts. I'm like, okay, I'm following you, but I need to make sure that you can,
Yeah.
break this down a little
Right.
bit more. So let's look at that. But yeah, I mean, as far as struggles, it is always kind of in evaluating cases and not getting too, gung ho of like, well, this should be below the standard of care,
Mhm.
and seeing that and stuff. And then just kind of the realities that a lot of times, especially with medical malpractice, there's this inherent risk. And, making sure that a case that we have is, we can really fight against that if that is something that comes up that, oh, this was an inherent risk of the surgery. Um, so yeah, that can be difficult.
Yeah. Well, I'd have to agree with you on that 100%. Sometimes when we have the cases and we're looking at whether there's merit for med mal, um, the events are shocking. Some of the events can be shocking. But yeah, but they're also not a deviation from care, which sometimes it seems like this has to be so obvious. But when we really start digging into things, it's really not. And sometimes there's hard pills to swallow with some things, because I mean nothing is perfect, no system is perfect. So sometimes you have to swallow that. And that's a hard pill to take, and yeah, it's just not fun. So sometimes you feel deep down in your gut like this really should be different, but your hands are kind of tied. So
Mhm.
that is a big challenge. I 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so
that with
is
evaluating cases sometimes because you have to have the deviation from the standard of care but then
mm,
also damages from that, and those are sometimes the hardest conversations to have with people is you weren't damaged because of this negligence, and sometimes that it's even results in the loss of life. We had a cancer situation where there was a deviation from the standard of care of catching the cancer, but
um,
given how aggressive the cancer was, the stage and other factors, there was really no
um,
damages. And I just remembered, sitting down and talking to that family, and it just was gut-wrenching that this is the reality, of how the legal system works. That can
yeah.
be really difficult.
Yeah, hard conversations. I will be honest, I don't miss that. Being I mean, even at the, hard conversations with families about things going on,
Mhm.
it is not fun. I mean, it's necessary, but I think when it's hard for you to have these conversations, it just shows the level that you care. You care
Mhm.
about the people, you care about the situation. So the harder it is, I mean, I personally feel like that just means the better it is that you are the person having this conversation. But doesn't mean I like it. It's
Yeah,
hard. I
very
don't
hard.
enjoy it, but there are times where I'm like, but I'd rather it be me than if I know somebody else's personality. I'd rather it be me.
Yeah.
Um, but it's still incredibly hard. Yeah.
Hard. Yeah. And just being honest with them, like that's what sometimes I get calls from people and they tell me, and they're like, I've talked to 3 other attorneys. They all said they had conflicts. And I'll hear their case and I'm like, I think no one will tell them they don't have a case. And, that's where it's so hard to be that person to say to them, look, this is what the issues are with a potential case for you. But I always think if I'm in their shoes, I would want someone to tell me. I would want someone to be
Absolutely.
honest.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I don't know if I'd say a go-to saying, but that's like my signature saying that I talk to people. If I can't help them, I always point out the two hardest parts of my job are number one, putting a value on a child's life. It
Mm,
is the hardest thing. Every time I have to do it, it keeps me up at night. I just feel awful about even having to do it, A, but B, how you do that. And especially now as a mom, I'm like, you could never
hmm.
put any value on my child that I'd be like, that's enough to ask for.
Right.
So that is number one, the hardest part of my job. And number two is telling people I can't help them. It's a horrible situation to be in for people to turn to a, legal professional because usually they're at their lowest of lows. And then to be able to tell them, I'm sorry, I can't help you. But at the same time, I would rather tell them than lie to them about, what I see in their case, or just say, well, I have a conflict. So, I'm not going to tell you what I think about the case and stuff. So that's really something that's been important to me in my practice. And, through my office is being honest, even when it is the really hard conversations.
Well, you know what? The honesty, I'm sure that as hard as it is, they have to appreciate that too, that someone cares enough to give the hard truth. But I think that also ties into, which is what is awesome that I know you guys do free consultations, and I know you're a big push for doing that. I'm the same. I think that it makes complete sense because you never know when you're cold, like speaking to someone cold, you don't know if you can help them yet or not. And you're right, when people are coming to you, they're in a situation and they're not coming to you if they didn't actually need some advice or help or guidance, something.
Mhm.
So to be able to, one, be able to be that honest voice, to just be straight with them and tell them so that they can do whatever it is at that point that they need to do to best care for themselves. But then also do it without having to charge them, and them be like, "I have to pay to hear that, there's nothing that can be done." I think that's just kind of a kick when you're down, which is awful, and it makes you feel terrible as a person, and it does. And yeah, I completely resonate that with you, that, I'm a mom too, and I think when you have kids, you do start viewing things differently, because there's nothing I can do to stop me from, when I see situations, to put myself in that position or put my kids in that position. And then I'll become a complete mess. I mean, just just looking at your Instagram stuff with your sweetest posts and things with your son, I get all like, "Oh my gosh," I start getting emotional. My kids are bigger now, and so they're not small like that anymore. And I'm like, as beautiful it is, and like it makes me miss those times when they're so much smaller. I have one small one left that he kind of came around as our happy surprise, but my other kids are much older. And so those little moments, I'm at a point where it's like I didn't think I was going to get those back, but now I'm like, they're so limited, and things they hit you completely different. The moment you have your first kid to the moment this is the last one.
Yeah.
Those are really hard things to all of a sudden just have control over yourself and how you feel. It's crazy stuff. But speaking of your kids, how old is your son? Is he 2?
He'll be 2 in May. Yeah.
He'll be
So
2 in May. It's
that's a little
almost
less
here.
than a month. Oh,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh. And when are you expecting your next one?
July. So July 12th is my due date for my second.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
it's great that they're not real far apart and their birthdays are close. That's fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good weather for
Ex-
birthdays. But
exactly.
man,
Especially in Montana. Yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah.
And the time just flies. It flies. My oldest, he's turning 20 in June.
Oh my
It
God.
flies. I
Well, you
know.
don't
And
look like you have a 20-year-old. So
well,
that
I
have
do.
that
He'll
going.
be I turned 40 this year,
Oh
and
my
he
God.
turns 20 this year. So,
Well, you look
I'm of
great.
legal age, I promise. No issues way back there, but yeah, and my kids are they're all so much older, and I love that stage of their life. It's very different, but man, do I miss the little stuff. And my little guy now, he's 3.5. He'll be 4 at the end of the year. So again, it just feels like it's flying by. It is
Yeah.
so hard to really hold on to, which is I think I love that you have all of your posts because oh my God, you're gonna treasure them forever.
Yeah.
Forever. And social media was not a big thing when my older kids were small. It was not. And my littlest one now, he doesn't want me to take pictures. He just wants to play with his siblings. So get a lot. I take them when I can. But oh man, it's so wonderful. I think anybody who's having kids now, oh man, just really, really save those things because you're gonna just love them to death later. It's
Oh
just
yeah.
they're amazing.
Yeah, no,
Um,
I have like so much storage on my phone because I'm like, I can't delete any pictures. So
I
I'm
know
like,
we just keep upping
there.
ours too. We just keep
Yeah.
paying more each month. We just up it every month.
Yeah.
Because how do you pick one over the other? I'm like, they're all precious. I don't want to lose them.
Yeah. I'm like,
Um,
I can't delete any of them unless it's like completely blurry. I'm like, no, I'm not deleting any of them.
same.
So
Same, unless it's a complete blur, I don't mess with it at all, but, um, well, now you have your one son, and now you have another one coming. Do you know what it is yet, or
I do.
is it a
And
secret?
I have not announced, which
You
I
don't
can,
have to here, no
well,
pressure.
no, I can because honestly, we just haven't gotten around to it. So I can announce here. That could be kind of fun. We are having another boy. So we're really
Yay! Well, there
excited.
you go, exclusive right here, you're having a second boy.
Yes.
Oh, man,
Yeah,
that's
so we're really excited, especially to have two boys so close together. And then
awesome.
like age wise and season wise, like you were talking about, it's gonna match up. So I'm like clothing wise, that'll be really nice to read.
Yes, that will be awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
every outfit's gonna have a memory with it too. It's gonna be awesome. We have this one little outfit. It's the college where me and my husband went to. It's a little tiny 2T sweatshirt from the college we went to because that's where I met my husband was in college. And we still have it. We bought that when who's gonna be 20, our son, at the time he was 2. He was almost 2, and we bought it in 2T. Every single one of my kids has worn this sweatshirt. And we
Oh,
still have it, even though my little one's almost 4. There's no way he'll fit into it, but we still have this sweater. And I'm like, this is the one thing I cannot get rid of. I absolutely can't. Every single kid has been through it. And somehow it hasn't gotten like totally destroyed along the way. I don't know how that's possible because boys are so rough
they are.
with their so I have 3 boys and 1 girl. But
Oh,
even my daughter, she's just she's kind of tough. So
yeah.
they're all just real rough on their things. So but every clothing when you can do that is a memory and it's wonderful. And you pull it out and you start thinking of so that's awesome. But
That's
boys,
special.
I'm gonna say I love boys and the mamas is always so
There's
much nicer. Girls are so independent and tough and they get there so early where I mean they have their daddies when they need stuff, but with boys, I'm telling you, they stay sweet. They stay sweet with their moms. They just do. And so, oh my gosh, so you're gonna get double the blessings. You're gonna get double, and it's gonna be wonderful.
I'm glad to
Oh,
hear that because yeah,
yeah. It's so great.
I am so attached to my son, and I'm like, okay, like if we joke around that like I'm never letting him leave for college and things
I do
like
that
that.
too. I do that too.
Yeah,
Or I tell my kids, if you're moving, you have to tell me where we're all going. I
yeah,
tell them, you have to tell me where we're going because I can't imagine any of my kids just moving far away and I just don't get to see them whenever. Like
yeah,
I just it makes me sad to even think about. Like I'm like, why would you want to leave me? Like why?
yeah,
I take such a good care of you. I'm like, are you hungry? I'll make you something right now. Like, stay with me.
exactly.
So
Yeah, it's so
man, I
hard to
can't imagine.
let go. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And how do you find or can you find sometimes that balance between work and home with your kids? Because I'm telling you, if I had my choice, I would not work. I would do nothing. I would just stay home and snuggle my babies as much as I can.
yeah,
But I mean, there's a part of me where I like to work. But I
yeah.
mean, finding that balance to where you're not doing too much of, the work, so you're still having those, precious moments. How are you managing that? Is it going well for you or
Yeah, no, so it has gone well. I do have to say it's gone very well. It's not always perfect. I always tell people it's kind of like just depends on the day. Sometimes I'm not super balanced. Sometimes, it is all work. Sometimes it is all kids. You have a sick kiddo at home and finding kind of that in between. I do have to say, I mean, first off, just the office that I have, and that was a big reason of, why this was the office I wanted to join. I, wanted to stay with Paul and, be able to continue to grow our office is he is a parent. He has a daughter who's now off to college, and
Oh
that's
my
just
gosh.
amazing to me. But I
Yeah.
watched him as a dad and see how important it was for him to put his daughter first and, to be there for her. And that's really what I wanted. And I was very vocal with him about that, the fact that I wanted to be a mom and have kids. And he's always been extremely supportive. And that is really helpful to have an office that's supportive about it. That way, if something
Mhm.
comes up, we are willing to cover for each other if things happen. And so that's been very helpful, just having an office where I don't have to be ashamed that my kid is sick and I can't make it in, or, that something came up and this is going on, or even taking a
Mhm.
maternity. I took a 3-month maternity leave with my first son and planning on taking a second one. It's always a little bit, it's not like completely off. I mean, just with email
Right.
technology, it's hard to
Right.
ever like walk away from work, especially the practice
Yeah.
of law. Um, but so having that office has been, really important. Second, my husband, I mean, he's amazing. He has a full career and is very passionate about it as well, but he's willing to step up to the plate too. And so it doesn't always feel like it's always, following on my shoulders or anything like that.
Mhm.
So being able to rely on him has been very helpful as well because, that allows me to, hey, I have to, get this done for work, or I have to go in today. I need you to do this, or, pick up our son and things like that. But then also just like, when I'm with my son, that's my time with my son, and I try to be very present with him. Um,
Mhm.
and just really enjoy those moments. And for me, that's what gives me the balance is when I'm with my son, I'm with my son. Now, do I get emails? Do I get phone calls from clients and potential clients? Yes. And there are times where it's like I got to answer those, or I'm happy to answer
Yeah.
those. And my husband knows, okay, now he's got kiddo for a little bit while I'm doing that. And, we go back
Mhm.
and forth. Um, and so just knowing it's not always going to look perfect, but as long as, my thing is that my children know, like, I love you, you are my number one, but it's also important for me to have a career and to be able to provide for our family. And so
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't always look perfect, but when I'm here
Mhm.
with you, that's where my attention is. And it's not, just scrolling on Instagram or things like that. Like I try to be very intentional about that time. And it doesn't always look perfect, but
Right.
I think as long as you have that conversation with yourself, then that can really get you a far, a step ahead of it, of being cognizant of that time. So,
Mhm.
yeah. What about
Yeah.
you though, with running, your own firm now and
Yeah.
having that, like, how have you
Yeah.
managed that
I was
balance?
gonna say your answer is pretty perfect. Excuse me. Your answer is pretty perfect because my husband, I don't think I would survive without him if he wasn't supporting me too. And but he has a full-time job as well. He works. Fortunately, my kids are a little older, so most of them are in school. My 20-year-old, he's kind of does his own thing, but he does online college, so he's still close to home. But so he didn't move away. And my 3-year-old, I mean, I have to put him in daycare. I wish he could stay home with me all the time, but I will get nothing done. So um but when my husband's done with work, I try to get as much as I can done during like work hours, right? But I have the same thing. I get calls from clients, I get calls from people who are working with me, who I need to be available to them as a resource, a support, get them what they need so they can do their work. So there is no 9 to 5 on phone calls, on emails, on all those things. They're always there. But similar to what you said, I mean, my husband, he knows he'll step in. So if I'm better at it now than I was when I first got started. When I first got started, I was solo. Oh man, I feel like I was a hot mess because it was really hard to make that structure. But now that I have people working, in my firm with me, it's much easier to pull away to have that family focus when the time is right. But the balance is not 50-50. It's different. And every day it looks different. And even with me and my husband, our responsibilities are not 50-50 either. There are days where I'm not doing anything work wise except, answering urgents. But I'm just 100% at home with the kids because, yeah, they're sick. Maybe I'm sick, which is awful, or whatever it is. But there are other days where it's like I've got something really big that we're working on, and like I need you to just take over. And he's game and he does it. It's not always fun. But the same that you said, your kids, the biggest thing is they all know that I love them. They all know that I do this. A lot of it is for them, and it helps. I actually get to work remotely. I have a home office. I work at home. So like if my kids are sick or if my kids like need me to pick them up or something's going on, I'm not far. I'm not far away and I can be there for them. And I think me moving into the position I'm in now, this was the whole point, flexibility of it. The ability to put family first when it's necessary and when it's important and needed, is why we do it. Previous jobs, especially when you work in medical, you have no choice. You have no flexibility. They don't care if, mom's at home dying. It's like, well, you have to be here. And it's been awful and it was terrible. And that's why I always wanted to be a mom too, always from the time I was a kid. I just want to be a mom. I don't know what I want to do. I just want to be a mom. So it's always been a big thing. And so when I started doing, medical and nursing, and it took me down a path, but it really is not cohesive with being a parent and having family time and having balance. And so I did it for a while until it just hit me hard when I had who's now 3, when I found out I was pregnant with him, and I just said, "No more. I'm not doing it again." It was so hard with the other 3, and I'm not doing it anymore. And I was like, "I'm making a change." So at that time, that's when I started transitioning and making the change and started putting things together for this. And I'm so glad I did. It's huge difference, but I mean, I can drop everything if I have to for my
Yeah.
kids, right? And
Having
it's great.
flexibility. Yeah, it's so important, I think so undervalued.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that like, our firm is very flexible and, even for, it's like if I have court, that might not be something I can be the most flexible on and, you have mediations and meetings set up, but there is still a lot of flexibility in my job and in my husband's job. And that really has been, I think, a game changer for us of being able
Mhm.
to, share those responsibilities and it not just fall on one person. So, having flexibility goes such a long ways, especially as a working parent, definitely.
Yeah. And I think it's great that you were able to get your setup before your kids, because I think it makes it so much easier than when you have your kids and then you're trying to make the change after the fact.
Yeah.
Doable, but way harder, way
Yeah.
harder. So it's
So
doable though.
yeah, it's funny that you say that because now, like, as a parent, I look back to law school and I'm like, the parents in law school, I'm like, I always had a ton of respect for them and, gave them a bunch of credit. And I'm even like, I didn't give them enough credit and I didn't give them enough respect. I'm like,
Right.
how in the world were you doing that? Because,
Yeah.
like, working and trying to have a full-time job. But I mean, to me, law school was so much more than that. I mean, it was a full-time job plus. It was like you go all day you do stuff all
Hmm.
day, you have to do stuff at night, early in the morning, and stuff.
Hmm.
I just look back at that, I'm like, those were some rock stars that,
Yeah.
had kids and were parents in law
Yeah.
school.
And I'm one of those people. I went through nursing school, did all that after I had my 3
Mhm.
kids, and it was
Wow.
insane. It was insane. I don't even know, I was probably a zombie of a person for a year and a half. Like it's not fun at all. But I mean, I hate that I had to do it that way, but that was just the way that it worked out for me, and it was exhausting and it was awful and I hated it. And I'm like, I love my kids, but I wish I didn't have to do both right now.
Yeah.
It would be great, but it's part of that is me trying to help push with my kids with
Mhm.
figuring out, similar to what your parents did with you, where it's start having those conversations early about what you want. It's difficult because with my kids, I have a daughter, she's 13. I have a 16-year-old and then my 3-year-old, but it's difficult because they haven't been exposed to much. They don't know what all their options are. So it's hard for them to make a decision of what they want because I don't think they've really thought about it much. So we do try to have those conversations, but I want them to go for that before you start thinking of kids, before you start thinking of all those things, because I'm like, I have no doubt they can do it, but it's a struggle, and it's just a harder path. But I mean, getting those early conversations to try to help them. avoid it because I
Yeah,
wouldn't wish it on anybody. It's hard. I don't wish it on anyone.
it is hard.
So, and you live
Yep.
poor at the time because you can't work and do both, and it's hard.
No, no.
It is. I couldn't work and it was all just on my husband. And you live poor for that duration of time because you have to,
Yeah, yeah,
because
you have
you
to
can't do
figure it
both.
out and make those sacrifices. But I think it is good too for kids to see that, and it's funny. We joke about like my poor kids, are gonna have to like work so hard for anything that they want because that's how my husband and I were raised, it was really like you had to work really hard. And
Hmm.
I think it's good for kids to have to do that and for kids to see struggle as well. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just the reality of it and to see, okay, if I want something, I've got to work really hard. And it's not always going to look, like rainbows and sunshine. Like there's going to be some cloudy days. It's not going to
Mhm.
always be the best situation, but we're going to get through it. I'm going to put my head down, I'm going to work hard, and I'm going to get through it. And so I think like being able to instill that in children is so important for them the rest of their life. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. There was one question I actually wanted to ask you, and it's work related that I got so sidetracked because we probably started talking about kids and things. Um, but just I was curious, if do you have any cases where they just that you have had that really stick with you? Like there's these ones where it's just like I cannot forget this case and it just sticks with you. And it's like no matter what, I'll never forget about this case. It's just always here to stay. Do you
Yeah.
have a case like that you'd be okay sharing?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have a handful of cases that, stick with me in my everyday. But one I'll share, it was an incident, a wrongful death case that we had,
Mm,
and it was like my very first week working here as an intern before I even started law school. And Paul came to me and said, "We're going to take this case. Will you open up a file?" And so I said, okay. And so I opened up the file and it was for a, wrongful death of an individual who had passed away on a bus. And a, child passed away and he had Down syndrome. And so we, went through the case and the case, took quite a while. It always takes quite a while by the time you get through everything. And um, we ended up settling that case. And now I was at the end of my law school career, beginning my career as an attorney. And so I really saw, because I worked at this office my entire law school career. So I saw that case from beginning to end. That was kind of my first one that I saw from the very beginning, open up the file to the
yeah.
very end. But it was so touching on me. And I actually still have the picture of this individual in my desk,
Oh,
and I look at it from time to time. It's been a big motivator for me. We got to know the family very well. Becoming a parent, I still am in contact with the family, and the dad, even reached out to me after I had my son, and we talked, and I said, I knew how much you loved your son before I was a mom, but now that I'm a mom, I was like, I don't even know, how you went through this. Like it was just so difficult. It was so tough.
yeah.
And so that has been a case that really impacted me. I mean, it was just seeing it from beginning to end, but just such a tough case. And we ended up, fighting really hard for that family and getting some justice for that individual. But it just meant so much. And it was a joke that that case was like my case and it lived in my office. It didn't go in the filing cabinets. Like people knew that case was in my
That was
office.
your case.
And yeah, and it stayed in my office. It was not to be filed away. It was always to be in my office because that one just really hit home and touched me.
Mhm.
And so that's probably one of the, bigger ones that day to day, I think about it a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of cases like that when you're working with families, and I mean, there's a lot of different situations of injuries and wrongful death, medical malpractice. But when you're working with families who have lost someone, and especially a child, and you get to know that family so well, it's hard to not have that affect you and kind of change who you are a bit and just
Yeah.
follow you no matter what. But I really take that as a blessing because I'm like, we get to help these people. Like, and I would want someone to help me, God forbid I was ever in that situation. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good
Oh,
question.
that makes me a little emotional right now. I get really wouldn't say I hate getting emotional. I don't know why. Maybe somehow I was raised where it's like we just keep things to ourselves. But my 16-year-old is autistic. And
Mhm.
so anything that I start talking about or anything, any kids with special needs, or I mean, real specifically autism, it like cuts into my heart so fast. Um, so yeah, that is real. Yeah, that hits me for
Yeah,
sure.
no, and especially I think in that case, and kind of probably some of those emotions is,
Yeah.
that's someone that you want to make sure they're having an advocate who really understands them and is going to fight for them, and that was the thing on that day that just had not happened for them, like no one had fought for them and paid attention how they should have that day, and it ended in a tragedy, and it forever changed that family, and so that's
I
very
can
difficult.
imagine.
So to be that voice, it was
Yeah.
so impactful. I mean, it gives me chills still,
Yeah.
because it was such an honor that that
Mm.
family trusted us with that we could fight for them and, step up to the plate. So that's what I think, we get jokes about being ambulance chasers and all of these things. And I
Yeah.
get it. I fully get it, but my office, I feel like we have a really good reputation. We work really hard to be, good, honest people. And when we get these cases, what it's really about is, working with these people and fighting for them, like being that voice and being aggressive and not backing down and make sure like that we present the best case possible for them. And that's what we really try to do. That's, our firm. That's just who we are as people. It's not like it's, some motto that we have to have. It's just who we are. And I think that's what has amounted to the success that we've had. I mean, my partner's been voted Missoula's best attorney 13 times. It's like that's a huge accomplishment, for our firm to have. And it just really is a testament to the type of work that we try to do. And so I'm really passionate about that because at the end of the day, that's what matters to me. So,
Yeah. Well, that does I will say that that is very apparent, and I think it really does come across, even with posts you make on Instagram. There's really this great I mean, it's not even just underlying, but it's just I think it's very obvious. There's a lot of care in there about doing good and a lot of yeah, honesty and just doing what's right. Those things in there. And you actually had a post you may not even remember because it's oh my, so we're in April 2024. So I think this was literally 2 years ago. You actually had a post on your Instagram where you were talking about autism, and there was something with Autism Speaks, and you were sharing information on your Instagram about how, interacting with, with like legal professionals and when there are um legal issues at play, or just when they are involved in the judicial system in general. And this is what I mean, like anything hits me hard and I get emotional. Just reading, and it's like, here are tips and things of things to consider. Just reading that. I think it was a few days ago, I was looking at it and I was like becoming a mess because anytime there's anybody who speaks, positive or advocacy or help in that arena, I mean, my whole brain just shuts down and I turn
yeah.
into like this blob of a mom. So even that, so I didn't know if when you put that on there, um if um if there was anything like kind of connected to that. Like it just seems very specific to do an autism post. And so I didn't know if autism in some way affected your life in any way, whether, indirectly, directly, or maybe some other special need. So I was just kind of curious about that. But I love that it's on your account and yeah. So I really loved that.
Yeah, we really, it's it's interesting because when we talk about like marketing and people come to us and they'll be like, "Who's your target audience?" And I'm like, "We don't have a target audience." I'm like, especially for our firm, I'm like, it's anyone who's gotten in trouble, anyone who's been injured. We see people from all different walks of life, and that is so special. Like it is so rewarding, and we get to learn so much from those clients too. And so that to me is, going back to what I said earlier about like wanting to have a client and stuff, but it's like I want to get to know other people and I want to learn from them and their experiences and, what made them who they are because we all come from these different walks of life, and we've all had these different experiences that have shaped who we are.
Hmm.
And providing an opportunity to kind of come together and like learn about that person and why they went through what they did, or why they are how they are, like that is really important in being able to advocate for that person, especially when we look at getting to the point of a jury trial. And even before then, I mean, some of the legal panels that we have to do are mediations. It's our job to tell their story. And I take that as a very serious job, just as, becoming an expert in any, medical area that we're trying to allege malpractice. It's that same thing of we kind of need to become an expert on this person and who they are and why they are this way, and what makes them unique, and being able to share that because that's their story. So, yeah, it's funny because I, love my job, and I never thought I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And now, after having a child, I'm like, wow, I didn't realize how hard it'd be able to leave my little one.
Yeah.
But the fact that I'm able to, come to work every day and truly love what I get to do and truly make a difference, it makes me, happy to come to work, and it makes it worth it to me to say, okay, I'm not staying home with my child. I am going to work, and I'm very passionate about the work that I'm doing. And so to me, that's kind of that full circle moment of like, it all kind of comes together. And I think that's probably kind of the way that you feel now, especially with having your own firm and making that jump of, okay, now I am getting to that best of both worlds that you really
Hmm.
wanted to and couldn't with your first three. And but now you're here, and that's amazing to have that with your fourth, and to be building something and be able to have that flexibility and be that mom that you want to be. So
Yeah. And I have to, as much as I'm like, I love to stay home, I love to work.
yeah.
So it's still, and the same thing, you're advocating for people, you're helping people. It's different the way I do it now, because now it's advocating and helping in support of attorneys who are practicing similar to what you're doing, whether it's personal injury, med mal, anything with medical records, but it's helping to add support and strength so they can continue to help. So, and it just trickles down. And so it's just helping in a different way. And I get a lot of fulfillment in that too. So as much as I would love to be with my kids all the time, I'm bugging them all the time with
Yeah.
whatever mom stuff I'm doing. But yeah, but there is a huge sense of pride and a feeling of, accomplishment and fulfillment being able to do something that can help another person as well. So yeah, it kind of hits all points. So when I'm here and I'm doing this, it's still purposeful and it still elicits my passion and I'm still helping. So that's, yeah, I love it. Um, okay. I don't want to eat into your day too much further. Because I didn't know how much conversation we would have there, but I was hoping it would be great. But before we close, would there be anything any additional thing you would like to share, whether it's about yourself or your firm, maybe promote something that's coming up or anything like that?
If anyone ever has any questions, I mean, whether you are looking to get into the legal profession, or you think you might have a case or anything like that, whether, if it's in Montana, I'd love to talk to anyone, even if you're like, I don't think you handle these types of cases. We act as a big referral source, and, we're happy to do that, help anyone that we can. I just would encourage people that a lot of attorneys do free consultations. So if you think that you have something, like talk to someone about it, because you would rather talk to someone than, lose the ability to hold someone accountable for their actions.
Mhm.
But yeah, if anyone is thinking about going to law school, or, opening up your own practice and looking at running a law firm and what that looks like, I'm more than happy to, talk to someone about that and help give any guidance that I can. I did teach a little bit in law school, and I loved that, and I missed that to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But I do think that, there are some really good ways to be successful in law school. And I've thought about like, trying to, do something down that alley to help people a little bit more in that, but always, time and trying to figure out stuff can be difficult. But if anyone ever has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer that. But also I just, want to tell anyone who's in the trenches going through it that just put your head down and keep working hard and you'll get there. Like that's my big motto is you just keep working hard, keep busting your butt, and you'll get there and the success will pay off. So
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Angie, for doing this, for agreeing, for being with me, chatting with me, sharing with me what you've got going on. And it's been an absolute pleasure on my side. I'm going to say an absolute pleasure just getting to know you better and having you here with me this morning. And I really look forward to hopefully staying connected with you. And so thank you so much.
yeah,
for being on the
thank
show.
you.